I came to the Warriorside because I want to share my story of plant medicine and how it's basically changed my life. And I believe that being able to tell a story where I can connect with people on an emotional level will be the best way to get that story across. There is an incredible stigma for mental health when it comes to first responders. And then I'll speak to the law enforcement aspect of it. Something that Diego went over yesterday about vulnerability that struck me was that it's actually strength. And it is something that I had thought about, but the way that he put it, it's a lot harder for someone to, basically say how you're feeling, legitimately say how you're feeling. And if you can do that, that shows a sign of strength. It's easier to, cross your arms and, walk away and say, no, I'm fine. I'm cool. Everything's fine. I don't have any problems. So picture this. It's September 2024. I'm in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I'm a retired deputy sheriff. I'm a former cop. I used to arrest bad guys, put them in jail for drugs. And now, I'm about to take an enormous amount of drugs and step into the unknown. But let me go back a little bit. I'm going to try to take this off. Okay. Let me go back a little bit. So when I joined to be a deputy sheriff, I was all about law and order, protecting and serving. And if I put you in cuffs, you had to meet the elements of the crime, plain and simple. And I thought I knew what I was getting into, but I really had no idea. I have seen a husband kill his wife in front of their 2 children on Christmas Eve. I've seen the aftermath of what happens to a person when they're hit by a train. I've seen people just killed in cold blood over drugs. And in the beginning, I thought I was handling it. I was just running and gunning and going, call to call to call, because I got 10 more calls on the board and I've got to get to those 10 calls. That's just how it is. And I learned how to deal with it by watching my dad. He was a homicide detective, so he also saw the dark side of humanity. The way that he handled it was he compartmentalized and then he self-medicated. So I watched over his career this slow motion, slow train wreck of self-destruction. And he took about 25 years off of his life. And it literally broke my heart. And I told myself that I was not going to do that to my family. At least not the drinking. But how do I come home on Christmas morning after watching a husband kill his wife, shoot his wife in front of their 2 children on Christmas Eve, sit in front of the tree, open presents with my family, and act like everything's okay? Well, I really couldn't. I was pushing it down, but all of these calls really started getting to me. It started manifesting into something that I didn't even realize was happening. It started off as frustration, and then it led to anger, and then it led to just straight rage, anxiety. But then life threw me a curveball. November of 2018, I was riding my county motorcycle home. I saw a fresh green light up the road. I gassed my hog, prepared to take a right-hand turn that I'd taken hundreds, if not thousands of times before. As I got into my turn, I didn't realize there was a slick substance on the roadway. My hog started sliding, and then it caught traction, and it threw me into oncoming traffic, and it slammed me down to the ground. And I realized, or I quickly felt my thumb was on fire. I was like, oh man, what is this? So I looked down, it was swelling, tried to grip, couldn't. And I thought, this isn't good because this is my gun hand.
I tried to look around, tried to assess, but it felt like someone just jammed a steel rod into the back of my neck. That's what happens when you land on your head. But the kicker was my left arm. I tried to lift it up. It felt like a hanging piece of meat. I could feel the inside of my shoulder all tore up and my bicep torn up. And that's when it hit me that I was pretty hurt. This wasn't one where I was going to rub some dirt on it and go back tomorrow. So I asked the officer who arrived on scene if he would call my wife, because we lived right around the corner. And Kim arrived on scene, and she assessed that there wasn't anything fatal. But the first thing she said to me was, "Robbie, I think this happened for a reason." And I snapped back and said, "Yeah, I took the corner too fast. I'll be back to work on Monday." And that was just pure ego and adrenaline or something. But there was no way I was going back to work on Monday. And in fact, I never went back to work. And Kim meant something a little bit deeper. And she was right, like she's usually right. With the subsequent surgeries that I had to my thumb, my shoulder, my bicep, and both of my knees, I had something that I had not had in years, and that was stillness. There was no distractions. There was no court. There was no mandatory overtime. There was no smoking and joking with my buddies at work. It was just me and my thoughts sitting in my man cave. And those thoughts came how much damage I had done. And not the physical damage to my body, but the emotional damage that I'd inflicted on my wife and son over the last 14 years. The whole time that I thought that I was protecting them, I had been pushing them away. And I told myself, they deserve much better. And from here on out, I'm going to give them everything they deserve. So I dove deep into mental health and wellness. Once I was healed up a bit, I started doing yoga. I started meditating. I started journaling. I was writing novels. I started reading self-help books. I was going to read my way out of this. Nothing was touching it. Nothing was touching the anger, the rage, the anxiety, which was frustrating me even more because I felt like I was putting in all this work and I wasn't getting any relief. I also had started listening to podcasts about veterans utilizing plant medicine to help them heal their trauma. And if you would have told me 5 years ago I'd be standing up here talking about the benefits of plant medicine and how it's helped thousands of people, I probably would have laughed. Actually, if you would have told me that 6 months ago, I would have probably done the same thing. But here I am. It's funny how life works out. So diving into the research, I realized, okay, this has been around 7,000 plus years. It's non-addictive. It's been proven to help for 7,000 plus years. So one of the longest trials that I've ever heard of. And all kidding aside, this all hit me like a ton of bricks. Because this was not, the drugs that I had grown up being against or the illicit drugs I was arresting people for and putting them in jail. This was not meeting the elements of a crime. This was not criminal. This was medicine. So I wrapped my head around that. And then the next paradigm shift for me was, I think I need this medicine in order to get my mind right. So I reached out to an organization called the Siren Project, which was started by first responders, for first responders who are going through what I was going through. They educated me, and more importantly, they gave me a sense of community because I was feeling very alone at that time. They prepared me and facilitated sending me to a plant medicine retreat. That medicine retreat in Mexico I talked about in the beginning. In part of that preparation, they talked about surrendering and letting go. My cop mind, I can't surrender. If I surrender, I die. I don't make it home to my family. But I was eventually able to work through that. And I'm so glad that I did, because during my psychedelic mushroom journey, I was able to step outside of myself, look at everything with a completely different lens. I was able to communicate with my wife, my son, my dad, my grandparents. I could understand their pain. I could understand my pain. I was able to realize something that's so simple, and I'd heard it, I'd said it, but that we're all just doing the best we can. I'd said that many times, but I didn't feel it. And now I felt it in my heart. And now I could see why my wife Kim does what she does, and why my son Eric does what he does, and why I do what I do. We're just all doing the best we can. So the next day was my 5-MeO DMT journey, or toad. And they call it toad because it is the venom from the Sonoran desert toad. They go out, they collect it, they dry it, and then you ingest it by smoking it through a crystal methamphetamine pipe. And it's the most potent psychedelic there is. So here's another good visual, is you've got this fairly conservative, square, retired cop down in Mexico smoking toad venom through a crystal meth pipe. But there I was. And when I ingested that toad, ego dissolved. There was no past, there was no future. There was pure awareness, oneness, pure bliss. Within that journey, I was able to realize that I'd been gripping the wheel so hard for so long. I've been controlling, analyzing, pushing, muscling through. I thought I was broken. And I realized I wasn't broken. I just needed to let go. And the vulnerability aspect was something that I wouldn't have been there if I didn't realize that vulnerability is strength. I always thought, vulnerability, that's for someone else, that's not me. Or maybe that's me down the road, but it took much more strength for me to raise my hand and say, I need help, than it ever did for me when I used to just cross my arms and say, no, I'm good, I'm cool. When someone was reaching out to me when they saw that I needed help. And that was actually weak. I think the biggest takeaway in the whole process was I found my purpose. And it's helping other first responders like me, because there's thousands of us out there that are drowning in PTSD, addiction, depression, anxiety, insomnia. And we're literally at a breaking point with first responders. And it's time we need to go big. And I know plant medicine is controversial. Trust me, I get it. Especially coming from my world. And I talk to people that are in my realm, and I talk to them about plant medicine, and they look at me sideways like, what the hell happened to him? But here's the deal. plant medicine, it changed my life, and it saved my life. And maybe, it can help other people. I never expected that I would have to take this journey to go to Mexico. But I am so grateful that I did. Thank you.